Mr. Rolls.
Commissioners, just a number of things that I'd like to just bring before you tonight. I believe you've seen some of the information regarding the environmental issues that everyone has been concerned about regarding the grain silo area. The lab tests have come back, and they have verified that nothing on the site there is deemed to be a hazardous or a dangerous material. With that resolution from the labs that provided it, that information again was forwarded on to IDEM, which is, by the way, still controlling the site. The work plan that we've established with IDEM, they've basically accepted. We have requested, and our consultant has requested, that IDEM release our work plan. The hope is that we will be mobilizing on the site on the 24th of the month. But I must caution everybody in expectations. IDEM is in charge, and we will not move. I also want to make sure, while there's a number of people saying, well, some of those materials, have a shelf life of so long, nothing on that site, is at a dangerous level. The lab has confirmed all of it. I want to assure the Commission, though, that in the removal of the debris, we will proceed with caution as we load things up to make sure that we don't disturb something that might be a potential hazardous piece. They have requested that we be on the lookout for maybe the container that the material was in. If we come across it, they would like to make sure that we isolate it and encapsulate it and close it and remove it. So all in all, we are approaching it. So for any reason you should see someone out there with a hazmat suit, we're just being super safe.
Seeing none, I do have one. Any update on the status of demolition of the former grain elevator?
At the present time, the demolition contractor has moved off the site. He has removed all the materials under his contract. At the present time, the only thing left to be done is the, quote, cleanup, sweeping up of the fine particles and stones that are left over. The environmental consultant did not want our demolition contractor to do that work. He felt we should have a separate contractor that was experienced in dealing with so-called hazardous materials, even though it's been deemed to be all dormant and not dangerous. And the other part is to pump out the four cisterns that were underneath each of the four towers of the grain elevator. But we're testing that water to see if it's contaminated. If it's contaminated, we have one vendor that will come with a tanker truck and pump it all out, haul it away. If it is not contaminated, it will be removed by a conventional hauler.
Any other items, Mr. Higgins?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Rolls, I believe we have change orders under item 3C.
Yes, I want to present to you today the change order for the environmental cleanup involved with the demolition of the grain silos. As you're well aware, we've had an environmental issue that has been under the control now of IDEM, the state of Indiana, in conjunction with our consultant, August Mack and Associates, spending the necessary time and effort to clean up the so-called contamination according to IDEM standards. The demolition contractor has completed the work 100%. His work was carried out on a time and material basis. I want to assure you that his bills and his invoices that were presented to this office have been gone over in great detail by Matt Worthley, who has gone through it from one end to the other and is available to answer any question that you have regarding the costs.
Thank you, Mr. Rolls. Questions, Commissioners? Mr. Worrell?
So what's the amount of the change?
The amount of the change is $151,273.38.
That's the change.
That's the change.
What was the original?
The original contract was
$150,000.
So have we already paid $150, and we're paying another $151?
right.
Can you give a little bit more clarity to that? I think that would be surprising to some.
Absolutely. So, in essence, the load-out labor charge has gone from $32 to $100. The dump charge has gone from $25 to $700. The hauling charge has gone from $66 to $440. And to summarize that, the load-out labor charge, the people that were loading the actual material into the tri-axle, the big dump truck, they had to have special permits and requirements in order to be able to handle the material. The haul charge increased so much because they went from, they were going to take it to a place in Noblesville, and instead they had to take it to Clinton County. And the dump charge was, assuming it was clean material, was going to be $25 per triaxle dump truck, and it not being clean material went from $25 to $700. So when you add that up times the amount of, the number of loads, which was 112 loads total, that's where you get to, that was the majority of the cost, $140,000. And then the balance was broken out into miscellaneous pieces to meet all of IDEM's requirements. We had to have air quality control mechanisms on site to make sure that no airborne, none of the substance was leaving the site via air, as well as covering all the sewer heads, making sure none of it got into the water system. So it was quite an undertaking.
Now, this change order, of course, is in excess of the 20% rule that's required by the state of Indiana. However, our attorneys have assured us that this is recognized by the State Board of Accounts as an action, environmental action that was unknown. There's a standard that the state uses, basically saying, whatever it takes to get it done, we understand what it is. The same action was applied to Sophia Square site when the original cost and estimates and contracts to remove the dirt and on the site was approximately $1 million, and due to the contamination levels that were discovered as it receded, that cost escalated to $2.5 million. So this is acceptable under the state statute, by the State Board of Accounts, that we went over the amount. The only thing I could possibly share with you is that the original estimate that we've always had was to remove the product out of the site was $500,000. So that was from day one. That was the estimate by the appraisers even that appraised all the ground for us when we took a look at it, because their comment was, the ground was worth about $500,000, but based on the demolition cleanup and everything they anticipated the site, it would be about $500,000, making the ground having a value of zero.
Les, I thought, was it August Mack that was the environmental
That's correct.
firm that we hired? And I thought that the statement was that after 5 days that whatever the pink substance was inert.
That's correct. It was inert, but it was still, according to IDEM, had to be handled as a hazardous material.
Well, what's the term inert then mean?
It means that if you basically touch it, you're not going to get poisoned from it or get injured. But it is still a stained material. We've asked the same question, and they say it cannot go to a regular dump site. It has to go to the special dump site, and you cannot crush it up, which was the original intent by the demolition contractor. They were sending it to a concrete recycling plant where they would crush it up and use it for future road fill.
In the original contract, how many loads were contemplated in that first $150,000?
The loads never changed.
So
what you're paying is the trucking charge, distance. You're paying the dumping charge, excess of what you were supposed to pay for, and then you're paying increased handling because the workers had to have a license that they understood what they were removing, and they were doing it according to the environmental standards. It wasn't the people from the general workforce that.
But wouldn't we say that here's the number of loads and here's what it was originally going to cost, and then here's what it cost, and we're only paying the differential between the two?
we got a credit of $14,000 for what the original trucking and hauling and dumping and labor charges would have been. So if you turn, Mr. Bowers, if you turn to the, I believe the fourth document, it's the 11 by 17 document, yes, sir, you can kind of see that I've got original bid, and it says $14,000, or $13,776, and then below is the abatement cost. So what we've done here is we broke it out into an apples-to-apples comparison so that you can see what it would have been per load under the original bid and what it would have been per load under the abatement bid. I call it the abatement bid, but the abatement costs. And so we did get a credit of $13,776 towards the load out, hauling, and dumping of the material per our original bid.
And then whose responsibility was it to inspect the building prior to demolition to make sure that there's not something like this?
Well, when we originally went for permits, and through the permitting process, there's a number of things that you have to accomplish. And what we did is we hired August Mack. August Mack went and analyzed the site, and they found some asbestos on some of the buildings around it, and we abated the asbestos, I don't know if you'll recall that or not. So we took care of that, and then we went and filed for our permits, and we got state and local permits. So we filed all the necessary permits and paperwork, and unfortunately this bin was up at the very, very top of the tower and was just never, I don't know when the last time someone's been in the tower, to be honest with you.
But when we hire a professional to do an inspection for the whatever hazardous material, whether it's asbestos or whether it's this product, I mean, should they have inspected from top to bottom? And isn't there some culpability to the
That's a good question. We raised that issue several times with them, and they said, you contracted with us to examine the building for asbestos, which is a normal requirement to get a demolition permit. Our obligation was to report to you only if we saw something that was, as we walked through the building and as we examined the building, to bring it to your attention. As I understand it, this material, according to in discussion with one of the demolition contractors, was basically hidden behind a series of these vertical pipes on basically a shelf. And it was, to basically get at it, you would have had to rip out part of the pipes to get access to it. That's why when they demolished that part of the building and they grabbed a hold and started ripping out the pipes, that released the material that was packed behind it. And whether it was a bag or container or what it was, it spread then throughout the structure. This is no different than, again, I'll go back to Sophia Square when we put the claw handle in the ground and ripped open several large oil tanks that were below the surface and had not been picked up by the magnetometer and things like that. We've had that on repeated occasions. On that job, we also had the claw hammer reach down in debris and break up a series of 5-gallon bottles filled with DDT from the old hardware store that were covered over by debris and garbage when they filled in part of the basement. This is a natural evolution of what happens in demolition of old historic structures or just plain old structures. We would like to hold them accountable, but I don't really think, because our instructions to them were really focused more on the asbestos portion of the project. And the permits that are granted by the various groups, I believe also has an inspector that goes through and kind of takes a look to validate that in granting the permits that we've all done what we're supposed to do.
So basically saying we got to pay the bill?
I'm afraid so.
Commissioner Morat, question?
Mr. Old, or Mr. Worthley, whoever, are you convinced that we did everything possible to to make this demolition as cost-effective as was possible?
I believe we all did, and I think the fact of it is that the cost and the bids for doing the work were well below our estimates of what was going on, what was going to be done. The demolition contractors all reviewed the property, all crawled through the building, all had a plan on how to do it. So bid-wise, we were most satisfied with the bid compared to what the estimates were originally forecast. When you tear down a building like that, especially the height of that building, there were a few issues that we had to address because of complaints by one of the neighbors. And that was basically, while the contractor runs hoses on the site and waters down demolition to reduce the amount of dust, we did authorize spending additional money to put in a large pump blaster that would really spray water all over the project to try and minimize the amount of dust and particles that go with it. The chemical was a complete surprise to everybody. And if I had actually crawled through the building and based on some of the stuff, I could have easily walked by it.
So it's in essence bad luck.
It's bad luck.
Okay. And did the contractor give you any concept that we were going to get a double a bill that was larger than?
That's the real problem that we have on environmental. No contractor will give you a hard number. They will give you unit prices to remove things, but sometimes do they base these numbers? They can't look at stuff and say, well, I think I'm going to take out 37 tons. If you want a price for 37 tons, they'll give you a price for 37 tons. But if it's 54 tons, you're going to have to pay the difference.
And if I may, not to, basically he said that if it would have been hazardous, there's basically two places you could take it. Closest one would have been to Michigan. So if this material was, had reached a certain toxicity level, when the results came back, then this would have had to been trucked to Michigan. And there's really, you either perform per IDEM or IDEM performs, and then they send you the bill.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Bowers?
I guess just one last thing, and not specific to this bill, but you hear two different stories from a demolition standpoint, and you say, all right, what have we learned, and how do we do it better the next time? And I don't know if you go into something like this, you say, all right, do I drill core samples in dirt, or do I, when I retain a professional and not be specific, but saying, really examine this, and I think we just need to think about our scope of work when we're talking about getting into something we don't totally know.
One of the points is that the environmental review, the phase one, which we do automatically for everything that we touch, phase one, usually the environmental consultant will say, hey, we think you got some problems, you need to do a phase two. Now, when we do a phase two, we dig holes and we drill. We do all that stuff. And I have to tell you, on that site, I was completely convinced that site, being a street department site, was totally polluted. And when the city authorized the phase two under Dade Haven Street Department, I again was convinced it's going to come back bad. And they got actually a clean report that site had no toxicity to it, including drilling holes in the dirt and things like that. The site was clean. I would have bet a year's pay against that.
Which site are we talking about?
We're talking about street department site where the facility is located.
So we had a phase two done?
We had a phase two. We went through all that stuff, and there was nothing on the phase two.
But isn't a phase two more inclusive than just an asbestos study?
Oh, yes. Yes.
In the building. They're drilling.
They're doing, that's the surface.
They drill the ground, they drill around it to see if they can find a pattern or a path that something has occurred. That's usually the first thing they do. And what they will do is they will drill in certain areas, and the commission, on many times, we drill right across property lines, right along the edge of property line, to see if there's any contamination coming from adjacent property, things like that, under phase 2. So we don't take this lightly. We do, when we suspect things, we take caution. And it's a situation where it was one of those things where it was just missed. And if someone could basically say that I've gone through that building, I've crawled in the tubes and the pipes and everything like that, we did not require that part. Because there was nothing that came out that you should look after. Environmental people, when they review a building, are always looking for more work. And if they can go to a building and saying, hey, we think you got some problems over here, you need to start doing this, we do it. We'll authorize the work. We never scrimp on phase 2 and investigation. We spend the money because the more information we have, the better off we are.
Thank you.
No, I